In this video, we will show you how to replace your throttle body assembly on this Nissan Altima. This will be located inside of your engine compartment along the driver's side of the engine. A quick note, there is a relearn procedure that needs to be done at the end. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. To gain access to this, we're going to remove the upper engine cover. To remove this, you'll find that you have three 10mm headed bolts to remove. Now we can lift this up and off of here. There will be one area that's pressed down into position. We'll just lift this straight up and off. There we go. There's the area there. With that out of the way, let's continue on with the air intake cover here. We'll start by disconnecting the mass airflow sensor and then dislodge the wiring harness, making its way to this position, and just set that aside. A quick check for corrosion. For these clips, generally you can just squeeze on the two locking ears and gently pull it out of position. This one can be a little bit harder to gain access to. Just give this a little tug. There we are. Set that aside. Looking alongside of the mass airflow sensor, you'll find an 8mm headed clamp. You can also use a flathead screwdriver for this. We want to loosen it just enough that we can carefully start sliding this hose out of position. Now you've done that, we'll make our way over here. Go ahead and squeeze on this clamp and separate the hose from this upper portion. Use some pliers. Separate that. We'll give it a quick squeeze, make sure it's soft and pliable and it's not broken or damaged in any way. Now we'll continue on down along the bottom of this air inlet tube. We're going to find another 8mm headed clamp. Go ahead and loosen that up just enough that you can remove the air inlet tube. Now that we have that clamp loose, we'll take hold of this and start gently pulling it away from the throttle body assembly. If it's stuck on there, you can just lightly give it a tug. We'll give it a quick inspection, set it aside. With that out of the way, we can disconnect the electrical harness for the throttle body. Go ahead and squeeze on that locking tab, lift that up and out of position, a quick check for corrosion, and we'll set that aside. Now the next thing we're going to do is disconnect two coolant hoses from the throttle body assembly. You are going to lose a little bit of coolant doing this. Make sure you have a collection receptacle under it so you can recycle that fluid properly. Now to make sure that we don't lose too much of our coolant, I'm going to pinch off the line. Being careful not to damage it in any way, I just want to restrict the flow. Continue on with some long nose pliers. We'll squeeze on that clamp and lift the hose up and out of position. Lift that hose off of there. Now once you have that out of position, continue on doing the exact same thing to the other coolant tube. Now with all that out of the way, we'll continue on to our four 8mm headed mounting bolts that are holding this in place. Now, as we remove this from the vehicle, keep in mind there could still be coolant inside of the throttle body. We want to make sure that we recycle that fluid properly. Now that we have the throttle body out of position, the next thing that you need to do is remove the gasket from the intake here. There is a small tab that you can generally grab onto to remove this, or you can just use a small pick or even a small screwdriver. If you're using a pick or screwdriver, you want to be careful not to mar the plastic of the intake. Now, when you're replacing your throttle body, it's always a good idea to replace the gasket. If you don't have a brand new gasket, you need to at least make sure that your original one is still soft and pliable and it's not torn, worn, or damaged. We'll go ahead and clean this off. Now let's wipe down the intake area. Make sure that no debris fell inside of the intake. It's very important. We'll continue on with our gasket. We'll take that with the small tab facing towards the front of the intake here. We want to make sure it seats all the way inside of the intake so we're sure we are not going to have a vacuum leak or anything the like. Okay, friend, let's get ready to install our brand new throttle body assembly. When we install this, make sure you have it in the proper positioning so that the electrical connector is facing towards the rear of the vehicle and your two coolant tubes are facing towards the front. As we bring this into position, be very careful not to press on the flap of the throttle body. Continue on to installing all 4 of your mounting bolts. We'll start each of them in before we bottom any of them out. Now that we have each one of those started in, we'll continue on by snugging them in a crisscross fashion. Once we've done that, we'll torque them to 89 inch-pounds. Let's continue on to our 2 coolant tubes. Carefully squeeze on those clamps and slide the hose into the original position. While doing so, you want to ensure that you do have hose showing on each side of your locking clamp. There's one side. Double check to make sure each one of those is completely secure. You do not want these loosening up on you while you're driving down the road. Let's move along to our electrical connector. We'll take this and press it into position. Listen for a click and give it a light tug. We don't want to break anything, but you do want to ensure that it is properly secured to the throttle body. Now it's time to reinstall our air inlet tube. We'll take this bottom portion and slide it right down onto the throttle body. Once we've done so, we'll continue on with tightening that 8mm headed clamp. Press it on there as far as possible. We'll make sure everything else aligns as needed before we tighten anything. Once it feels as though it bottoms out, we'll just take it a tiny bit further. If it feels like it jumps a tooth, you have to replace that clamp. Go ahead and take hold of that air inlet tube and try to give it a tug off of the throttle body. You need to ensure that it is properly secured. Let's move to the top end here where it connects onto the air filter housing. Slide that into position and tighten that clamp as well. Right there's bottomed out. Tiny bit further. Quick inspection. Let's move along to our breather hose. We'll take this and slide it right in position here. Take that clamp and put it in its original position. Let's move along to our mass airflow sensor wiring harness. We want to make sure that we secure it to the box and, of course, connect it to the mass airflow sensor. Listen for a nice click from that. All right, let's get ready to install our engine cover. As you remember, when we had removed it, we had that rubber area that needs to fit onto this mount. Just try to align that. Once you feel as though you have it aligned, gently press it on. Continue on to all 3 of your mounting bolts. Now that we have the engine cover on there, let's make our way over to the radiator cap. Ensure that it's cool to the touch. Turn that counterclockwise to remove it. We'll give it a quick inspection. We're going to start filling the cooling system. There could be a little bit of air in the system from that throttle body assembly. We want to try to make sure we burp out any air from in the system. You could try using a funnel of some sort if needed. Go ahead and take that and put it in position. Add the manufacturer's specified fluid and then run your vehicle for a short while, allowing the air to make its way up and the fluid to make its way in. Once you've done so, continue on to removing your funnel and reinstall your cap. Okay, friend, we showed you how to install the throttle body on your vehicle. At this point, you want to do the relearn procedure. After that, take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.